in class activity 2, we discuss buttons. And I give you two ways to set it up. So you can always look in class activity 2 and look at the two methods to set them up. Depending on which method you use, the code is going to be slightly different when you use your pin mode. So in this method, you'll see that you have a resistor, and you're going to use pin mode, whatever your pin that it's plugged into. In this case, it would be 2, and then you just write input all caps. If you set it up this way, you'll see that it's slightly different. You can't just take the resistor out. There are a couple other changes in there. But it doesn't have a resistor, and in this case, you're going to write the exact same thing, except for you're going to add an underscore pull-up, all caps. So you can take a look at those, try to figure out which way you want to set it up. In my simulation, I went ahead and built both right here. So this is my first method, the one that has the resistor, and I've plugged that one in. That's my orange one. That plugs into pin 2. Here's my other method, the one without the resistor, and I have that one plugged into pin 3. So I want to show you how we're going to look at the code real quick. So I have my code opened up to the side over here. And the one that was plugged into 2, this one here, the one with the resistor, this is the code that I type in. Just the regular pin mode, where it's plugged in, and then input. This one here, the one that's plugged into 3, that's the one that I have to include my underscore pull-up. An easy way to remember this, at least the easiest way I can think of, is this one doesn't have a resistor, which means I have to add something different to encode. So I add it here. What this underscore pull-up does is it actually does add a resistor in your Arduino and takes care of that for you. So it is adding that thing in there. Now the other thing to know is, now how do I actually get information from this? I press the button, the Arduino can see that it's pressed, and it's going to see that with the syntax of digital read. Right? So we're not writing here, we're not sending out information, now we're gathering information, so we're reading it. We're digitally reading a pin, and in this case I'm not using variables, I'm going to say pin 2, and that's all I got to put. What this is going to do is it's going to read pin 2, it's going to say on or off, which is going to be a 0 or 1, and then I say we're done. We're going to move on to another line. Now again, I've covered this multiple times, but if I do not save, when I go down to the next line, it's going to forget everything. Which means later on I'll say, hey, was the button pressed? It'll say, I don't know. You didn't tell me to remember it. So what I need to do, it needs to be done on this line where I take the reading. I'm going to need to assign this value that it's reading into memory. And just using the words that I used right there, you should know some things that I need to do. I use the word assign, which means we need to make sure that we use the assignment operator. There we go. Then what do I need to do? If I'm going to assign something, I need to have a spot to save it. I don't have a spot to save it yet, so I need to make one. This is on or off, which means there's two states. The best data type for that is a Boolean. So I'm going to type in Boolean, and then whatever you want to do to save this. You could call it X, you could call it Y, you could call it was the button pressed, as long as it's all one word. One that you're going to see a lot, and I'm going to use that one in case you look at other tutorials, is button state. And so what it's going to do is it's going to look at the button state. It's going to take a reading. It's going to save that into a new spot in memory. Later on in memory, I can then say, was that button pressed? And what it'll do is it'll look back in memory at button state and see what's stored there. If I did not store this, it gets forgotten as soon as it leaves this line. So it's very important when we do a digital read that we save it immediately.